knowing that I wanted to be able to help people who had gone through similar experiences with me in terms of their divorces and just being able to deal with those breakups or divorces in a way that didn't leave you feel less than. I didn't want people to experience the shame or the guilt that many people do experience, especially after going through more than one divorce.
This is the Joy Act, where finding joy beyond divorce begins with your understanding that the depth of your heartache shows the depth of your capacity for joy. I'm Dr. Lisa Summerour, and together we'll use accountability, alignment, communication, and trust to transform your journey. It's time to step into the Joy Act.
Welcome to the Joy Act podcast. I'm Dr. Lisa Summerour, and I am so excited to be on this journey with you. So some of you might be familiar with my book, Divorce is Not a Destination. I'm thankful and I'm really happy and proud to be able to say that so far it has been a source of information and inspiration for many people who have read it, who are dealing with their own relationship challenges. And today I'm thrilled to announce to everybody that I am expanding the horizons and rebranding my podcast to the Joy Act. And if you notice in the title, it's Divorce is Not a Destination, Act in Joy. And so it's a play on that and the Joy Act. And you might be wondering why the change, because people really liked the Divorce is Not a Destination. So I want to explain that. Divorce is not a destination. It is still a really powerful truth because I contend that nobody walks down the aisle planning for their divorce, right? And it reminds us that divorce is an experience that we move through. It's not some place where we should get stuck, right? And the Joy Act, for me, it represents our collective journey towards something that's even more profound, which is joy. A stands for accountability, alignment, communication, and trust. And these are the four pillars that not only guide us through divorce, but they can lead us to a life that's filled with purpose and authenticity and, yes, joy, right? So, this shift in my podcast title is because I really wanted to reflect a more proactive approach. It's about focusing on that end goal, not just surviving the difficult experiences that you might go through, going through a breakup or a divorce, but it's also about thriving and finding joy regardless of your relationship status. So, whether you are navigating the aftermath of a divorce, you are in the midst of a challenging separation, or you're working through your current marriage trying to strengthen it, or maybe you're just looking for personal growth and joy in your relationships, this podcast is for you. The Joy Act is about it's about equipping you. Yeah, I would say it's about equipping you with the tools to take accountability for your life and your choices, aligning your actions with your deepest values, communicating effectively in all of your relationships, and then building trust in yourself, first in yourself and then with others. And all of this while you keep joy in the forefront of that journey. And I think that is really possible. I wanted to make sure that I was doing everything I could to help listeners or viewers understand that we all have the ability to make joy a central core value that we operate from, even in difficult times, knowing that you can return to or dig deeper and get through the rough times because you know that joy is in you. So I really want you to remember that divorce is not a destination. It's not your final destination. It is an experience that you go through. But joy is something that you can embody, and it's something that you can pursue and embrace and share for the rest of your life. And some would say beyond, right? If that's your part of your faith system, your faith belief. And so I really wanted the focus to be on joy. Now, does that mean we're not going to talk about difficult subjects? No, because the accountability, alignment, communication, and trust are designed to help us move through things when they are not going well. We may have some tearful conversations here, but there will also be laughter and, yeah, joy and things that maybe we really have to ponder for a while because this won't be a place to come for every single answer. And it may not be, you may not get the answers from me. Let me put it that way. There will be times when I'll have other guests on. So I'm looking forward to that opportunity. But I really want you to think about this. Come here for that information and inspiration and come here to do the work for yourself on yourself. I used to be a part of a group, and the head of the organization, Brian Heroics, would say, we're here to change the world one person at a time, starting with ourselves. And so the focus of the work that I do is always on behalf of the individual, for that individual to want to come and work on themselves. Whether you are healing from a past relationship, nurturing a current one, or focusing on your relationship with yourself, the Joy Act is here to guide you towards a life that's more fulfilling, that has the authenticity that you want. And yeah, it's abundant in joy. So I want to thank you for joining me on this journey. I am so excited. Let's act in joy together. And I'm going to go ahead and start this first episode of the Joy Act. So I want to let me begin this show. Let me begin this episode just talking about divorce and breakups and the challenges that we all know we go through. And I say we because I am a part of this journey with you at the same time as I'm your guide here. This is something that I've experienced myself, and that was how I got started in this. But let's just talk about divorces and breakups. I just want to give you this one statistic because we tend to sometimes just get all of the negative numbers. And the reality is divorce rates have gone down from like 2010 until I believe 2000. Looking at the National Center of Health Statistics, their report, I think it was between 2010 and 2022 that you will see there's actually been a decline in the divorce rate. And some of this is probably because there's actually also been a decrease in the marriage rates as well. So that would stand to reason. But overall, and I did a show a while ago, I'll have to pull up some of that information, looking at marriages and divorces in the United States. We are still operating somewhere up in that 40%, 45% or so divorce rate. So almost half of the people who end up married end up divorced. And then you have the folks that go through more than one marriage and divorce. So this is one of the reasons I wanted to do the show, because there are so many of us out here who could use this kind of support. And I wanted it to be more than just feel good information. I wanted it to really be about doing the work on ourselves so that we're not just preparing ourselves for the next relationship, but we are equipping ourselves to have the best life that we're capable of having for ourselves. And if that means bringing another person into your life for an intimate relationship, fine. But the fact of the matter is, we are in relationship with so many other people every single day that we owe it to ourselves to develop this healthy relationship with ourselves so that all of our relationships are operating better, right? So that we are able to show up as our best self in every area. Because I do believe ultimately, if you are actually looking for a partner, you're looking for somebody to spend time with or share your life with, I think the best way for us to do that is to be really clear and comfortable in who we are, what we want, and how we show up. And that is the whole foundation of what the four pillars of ACT, that accountability, alignment, communication, and trust. That's really what it's designed to do. Like I said, I'm not just your guy here on the Joy Act, but I am a fellow traveler. My name is Dr. Lisa Summerour, and I'll just, if you don't mind, give you a little bit of my background. You can always go to my website at drlisasummerour.com and read about this stuff, or you can go to divorceisnotadestination.com and get information about me and my book, this book. But my background, I have several degrees. I have my bachelor's degree is in sociology, and then I got a master's in business. Then I went on to get my doctorate degree in education, and I have a focus on ethical leadership. And I followed that up with a second master's degree in Christian studies. So that's my formal education. And everyone who knows me knows that I am what you call a lifelong learner. And while formal education is what I chose to do for the most part, I don't believe it's for everybody. So I don't want you to hear all these degrees and think, oh, she must think everybody should go. I think you find what it is that you want to do and figure out what is the path that's going to equip you to do it the best way possible. And I am the first one to tell people, I don't know that formal education, spending that kind of money and that kind of time is the best way. And for me, the other side of my education has been through certificates and accreditations. So I am accredited to do the IDI, which is the Intercultural Development Inventory Assessment. I use that a lot with more with corporate clients. Also, the Equitable Leader Assessment, which again I use primarily with corporate clients. But I went through breakup and divorce coaching or accreditation program, an international program, and that program really helped me get grounded. So I came into this knowing that I wanted to be able to help people who had gone through similar experiences with me in terms of their divorces and just being able to deal with those breakups or divorces in a way that didn't leave you feel less than. I didn't want people to experience the shame or the guilt that many people do experience, especially after going through more than one divorce. But the reality is, a lot of people have not been married, but they have been in relationships that have been very significant. And the breakup of those relationships has been as devastating as a divorce would have been. And so I wanted to make sure that I actually got what I consider formal training to help people through breakups and divorces. And so I did that with a woman named Sarah Davison. She's out of the UK. She's a foremost expert in breakup and divorces coaching rather. And along with that, part of my education was through the Dash charity. And they are also a UK organization. They've been around about 45 years and they work with women and I believe some men, but they work with people who are coming out of their divorce, their relationships. Many of them are dealing with abuse or toxic relationships. So part of my training actually involves working with people who have been in toxic and abusive relationships. Typically, they are out of them by the time I would be working with them. But I had the wonderful opportunity of working alongside the Dash Charity Organization and knowing that my accreditation has been approved by them is something that's really important to me because I didn't want this just to be about my personal experience. So my book is not just a reflection on some of my experience, but it's also a wealth of knowledge from very credible learnings that I have experienced. So I'm very passionate about helping women through this journey. And I wanted my level of expertise and my learning and my background to all combine to really be able to do that as best I could. So that's why I'm here. And the reason I wanted to do a podcast, a couple of years ago, I met somebody who had been doing a podcast for a few years, and we met at a pool party. And as soon as he said, "Oh, I do a podcast," I basically adopted him as my podcast coach. And I always want to give a thank you and a shout out to Terry Wallman, who is a phenomenal musician and artist and guitar player and musical director and one of the best podcast hosts I know of because I love his interview style. I love how personable he is. I love the work and the research that he puts in to each one of his shows. And I am madly in love with his introduction. And if I thought I could use it, I would steal Terry's introduction in a heartbeat. But so I wanted to have this podcast so I could talk to primarily women. I'm going to steal something from, put the arrow on here. I'm going to steal something from Lisa Nichols. She said, I work with primarily with women and a few extraordinary men. And that is just because I grew up in a house full of women. Obviously, I identify as a woman. And for me, that just seems to be who I gravitate toward and who gravitates toward me. So there are people out here that work primarily with men and some do both. I will work with both, but I know for this audience, it's probably going to be mostly women. But you know what? Again, as Lisa Nichols says, and some extraordinary men, if what I am sharing speaks to you, then please, by all means, I welcome you to the show. I welcome you as one of the followers and maybe even a guest on the show because I want to have as many voices as I can so that I can reach as many people as possible and have them be able to relate to what it is that I'm talking about. So if that sounds like you and you're here, I welcome you. I tell people this because sometimes you're going to hear me speak as though I'm speaking on behalf of women. And that's just because I know that's my primary audience. So that's why you will hear that. And the target market, again, it's women. And I would say if I had to put I actually gave myself questions like I was interviewing myself. So I'm going through a list that I have here. I would say that my target market is actually the people who have been following me, the people who have been gravitating toward my book, the age has ranged from 30s to, I would say, mid 60s. But I would say that my primary audience has been in that upward area, somewhere between like 45, 55, 45, 60. And I'm a little over 60, so I would probably edge it up a little bit to include me. And I wanted to come on here weekly because I want to create a body of work that if somebody is in need of information or education or support, inspiration, I want them to be able to come to my YouTube channel or look on wherever they listen to podcasts, and I want them to be able to find enough information for them to find what they need and use this as a resource. So that's something I'm really excited about. And what makes this unique to me is the fact that one, I've been through this experience more than once. So I do speak from a really specific perspective that has a lot of, what word do I want to use? Maybe stigma attached to it. At one point, I still have the list that I didn't publish it in this book, but I started a list of all of these different people and how many times who have been married multiple times. And I do in my book actually do a list of family members and all of the divorces that I am aware of in my family. And when I became aware of them, like the divorces that had happened before I was ever married. And it's interesting, and it's an exercise that I actually suggest that people do because it gives you a minute to look and reflect on, did I know about these divorces and did I understand what that meant and at what age did that happen? Because when you're a kid and you have somebody in your family gets married, an aunt or an uncle, or your parents, your grandparents, somebody is married, or you see them get married, and then all of a sudden one of those people is no longer around. Did people have conversations with you about that? And so I did that exercise for myself, and I invite people to do it because I hope that it helps you sit and ask yourself some questions like, what actually did I know about divorce? Where did I get my information about what a divorce was or what separation was? Or maybe I can better understand why some people in my family went through some emotional things that I didn't understand at the time, but now I realize it was because of a breakup or a divorce. So my journey is one that involves more than one marriage, more than one divorce. And I talk about that more in the book. I won't go into too much detail now, but there was that stigma and that shame about, oh, how many times has she been married? What must be wrong with her? Right. And I had a couple of kind of key moments for me when it just dawned on me that this is my life. And I refused to feel shame and guilt and embarrassment about my life because other people wanted to judge it. And so it was a process. It continues to be a process for me, but I am definitely in, by the time I got through my own education and really working through my marriages, my divorces, it occurred to me that this is what life is. This is what life is. All of the relationships that we get into are not going to last us a lifetime. And the key for me was figuring out, what was I doing? What was my role? And this is where the accountability piece came up. It's you got to take ownership. I needed to take ownership of what was going on in my life. And so my divorce stories became things that I was able to sit and think about and reflect on. How did I get into them? Why did I get into them? What did I learn about myself? What is it that I need to not do again? What things do I need to change? And what worked and what didn't? And what are my coping mechanisms when things are not going right? So those things culminated to create a turning point for me where I was able to forgive myself if I felt that's what I needed. And I had to realize that we humans do human stuff. And sometimes human stuff is messy, right? And get through the emotions of it. So in the book, I go through an entire chapter on the loss cycle. And so when I started looking at my own accountability, it was taking me through that loss cycle so I can look and go, okay, some of the decisions that I made that I might not do again if I had to go back and do that. And I hate doing that because it's not that I hate the whole concept of regretting something. It's just that I always wonder if I went back and changed one thing, what would that have done? Would it have redirected a path in my life? Because at the end of the day, I'm loving my life right now, right? I am enjoying it. I feel like I'm having a wonderful life. And so I don't know that I want to go back and change a bunch of things. But I do think about when I was in that loss cycle, and I talk about it in the book. There are things, there are periods or stages. That's what I'm looking for. There are stages in the loss cycle when it's probably not the best time for you to make major decisions because you are not thinking clearly. You are in a really emotional state, and it's the time when you need to just slow down, process the emotion, and not make any major decisions. And so I was able to look back and go, ooh, that was one of those times you got really caught up in your feelings. You were not thinking clearly because if I had been thinking clearly and had been able to assess what I was hearing from my partner at that time, I would have been clued in that I shouldn't move forward with this. I shouldn't move forward with this. But because of circumstances, I was in a more emotional state and I made a decision during an emotional state that I ended up having to live with. And those are some of the things that hit me that were like key turning points in my journey. And I talk about those in the book because I want people to have an example in hopes that you'll go, okay, wait a minute, this reminds me of what I did. Plus, I feel like if I can be open and honest enough and vulnerable with you to some degree, and I do say to some degree, because near the end of the book, I actually share that you can be vulnerable without giving too much information away. And I'm really conscious of that in the book because I didn't want this book to turn into all of the ups and downs and ins and outs and pros and cons or whatever of my life. Because I think sometimes when that happens, the reader can get consumed with my life. And I wanted the focus to be on your life if you're reading the book. I want this to be a guide for you, not something that you get so engrossed in that you lose the ability to do the work because there's homework in here. There are exercises in here for you to do because it's part book and workbook or like study guide to some degree. And I have gotten feedback that has been really beneficial to people because I wanted this to be about, okay, I'm going to give you a little bit of information about me, but only because I want you to take that information and now apply what you got out of that to your life and take a look. I want you to reflect on what's going on or what went on in your life and see how you can apply this, right? So that's the real reason that this has become a little autobiographical, but not so much that you lose sight of you buy this book to do the work for yourself. And just in case you forget, that's why we have ACT. So the birth of the ACT framework, and it's ACT, that's accountability, alignment, communication, and trust. It was born before I started writing the book to some degree, but it wasn't as nearly as refined as it became as I started writing the book. I think when I started, it was just ACT. And something was missing for me. Something was missing, and it was actually the second A. It was that alignment piece. And the aha moment that led me to creating that was sitting down and asking myself, how did I process some of my more difficult breakups? How did I process the challenging, the really hard parts of any of my divorces? And I realized that the first thing I needed to do was take ownership because I think that whole accountability piece is the first step to empowerment. So these four elements emerged for me because they were just crucial. They were really critical components of creating a process that you can use over and over again when you are going through something difficult. And what's been beautiful about this is while I put this together, this framework, I created this framework to help people going through breakups and divorces. I have since been able to use this with people in corporate environments because the same thing applies to us dealing with difficult information or challenges when it all needs to begin with us focusing on ourselves. And very often we tend to see a problem and we're looking to blame other people. We think other people need to fix it. I didn't have anything to do with that. And the reality is, I want folks to look in that mirror and realize the only person that any of us have control over, to whatever degree we have any control, The only person that exists for is you. We can control ourselves. So I think if we start there, it opens the door for change to happen because we have been able to change ourselves. And when other people see that, they might be inclined to change as well. So ACT is AACT. And the accountability part is accountability for me. Let me just define that first. It's taking responsibility. It's taking ownership. Years ago, I had a pastor who used to say, you can't fix what you won't face. You can't fix what you won't face. And you have to be able to face what is your role, what is your responsibility in things where they are right now. And I think one of the challenges for people is when we hear accountability or responsibility, we think blame and fault. We think blame and fault, and we think, I'm not going to take the blame for that because it wasn't my fault. And so instead of thinking blame and fault, I want you to think responsibility. And I'm going to use an example. My family, we are homeowners, and I tend to like older homes. My family has lived in homes. Yeah, somebody trying to call me here. My family has lived in older homes that needed to have work done. They needed things to be fixed and repaired and enhanced and all of those things. And when you walk into an old home, one of the things I like is the character, right? You could have the hardwood floors. You might have a old brick fireplace with a beautiful mantle. We've had homes that have had the wood beams in the ceilings. And you look at it and go, oh, this is phenomenal. And then I can remember my dad hiring somebody to scrape all the paint that had been layers of paint put on the wood beams or brickwork that needs to be done. So there are things that have to be done with the house. And Isabel Wilkerson in the film, the book Cast, in the film Origin, the woman who plays her describes it using a home as a metaphor. And I related to that because, like I said, we've always lived in these old homes. And so if you think about it as buying a home and you go into the home and you realize that the floors need to be refinished and they need to be sanded and refinished. You go into a home and you realize the plaster is not holding up. There are areas where the walls need to be replastered and you need to find somebody who's basically an artisan. You need to find somebody that this is their specialty. This is the thing that they do. And you find all of these, the pipes may not be, there may need to be pipes that need to be fixed or replaced. The electrical, our home now, we had to get an entirely new electrical system put in this home because it was built in like 1958. Now, we could come in and say, it is not our fault that the electrical is old. It is not our fault that the roof needs to be replaced. It's not our fault. We aren't to blame for it, but we are now responsible. So if you believe that you are called to be a steward over the things in your life, then start with yourself and be a steward over what's going on in your life. And that for me is what taking accountability or being accountable means. It's figuring out when you're looking at that relationship, what are the things where I am right now that I can take responsibility for? And even if you want to go back into the relationship, not to try to save it or rebuild it or rekindle it, but to just use it as a data point to collect information and go, okay, what did I do in that situation that I maybe could have done differently? If I was going to do that again with somebody else, what could I do differently? And that's what it looks like to be responsible and take ownership. It is, for me, the foundation of personal growth is taking ownership. And we have to get over that aversion or that inclination to go, no, it wasn't me. It's not me. It was them. Because that person may have wronged you terribly. It could have been toxic. It could even have been abusive. And let me just say this about abuse. At no point am I saying that if you were in an abusive relationship, you need to figure out how to take responsibility for being abused. Abuse is always wrong. It is always the fault of the abuser. I'm talking about those things where you actually can go, I may have misspoken, or I may have showed up in that relationship with emotional baggage that caused me to not be the easiest person in the world to talk to or to reason with. Or maybe I was angry a lot. So be accountable. But when you move through that past relationship and get to where you are now, it is really important that you take ownership and that you find ways to be responsible for where you find yourself now. Because if you don't do that, if you refuse to do that, I think you give your power away to a large degree, and you position yourself in a way that you won't be able to move yourself out of it. Does that make sense? It's like you will keep yourself stuck where you are because you keep telling yourself, it's not my responsibility and there's nothing I can do. And that is when you will be stuck. And don't allow yourself to get stuck. I call it being held hostage in your own life. Don't become a victim of your life. Don't be held hostage by your life. Be aware enough. And even if you do it and you're uncomfortable, be intentional about taking accountability and being responsible, being the responsible person in your life. It will empower you. It really does empower your ability to make decisions. So that's the A for accountability. The second one is alignment. So alignment is, I always think of the bowling alley when they put those rubber tubes in the gutters so that when kids roll their balls down the hill, they can't go in the gutter. Alignment are your guardrails. Being in alignment creates guardrails. It doesn't mean you won't bump up against them, and it doesn't even mean that sometimes you might not roll over one, but it gives you perspective. It gives you a space to navigate within, to operate within, that provides some guidance and some safety for you. So when you, and what do you get in alignment with? Let's do that. So for me, what you're in alignment with are the things that are important to you. So I could say your values. What do you value? What is important to you at this point in your life? And when you're doing the accountability, after you get to alignment, you can look back and go, okay, I hold honesty, and that's a high value for me, right? Or family time was very valuable to you, or something that you value greatly. If you look back in your past relationship and realize that, okay, honesty was something that you valued and you did not get that in that relationship, you were with someone who was not honest, that will help you identify why you were struggling. If you look back and realize you were not being honest in that relationship, you might realize why they were struggling, but you'll also realize where the discord or the disconnect may have come from because you were living out of alignment with something that you say you value. The other thing about alignment when you come through a difficult relationship is you realize your values may have changed slightly. What's important to you today could be slightly different than what was important to you then. And so there are assessments that you can take. There are exercises that you can do. I have a really good friend who started off actually as my coach, Kat Snore, who does a really great exercise on identifying values. And she takes people through a process. I do one with my clients as well, because we both know how important it is for each of us to identify the things that are important to us, the things that are of value, that mean something to us, the things that are the guide rails or guard in our life from day to day. And when you don't have that, you're just bouncing around and moving around willy-nilly. And if you don't set your own value standards or guidelines, you will always be at the will or the whim of other people's values and guidelines. But when you do it, it will really help you almost immediately pick on things that are out of alignment for you. And then you just have to have the wherewithal and the ability to be able to pull yourself away from those things, or to remove those things from your life, so that you're not bumping into them any more than you absolutely have to. This can work in relationships, intimate relationships, familiar relationships, coworker situations. It could even work with, you could even apply this to where you actually work. Because if you're working someplace and you just realize the culture is completely out of alignment with who you are and how you want to show up in the world, that's when you realize this may not be the place I should be working. And what happens with some people is they want to go in and buck the system and try to change the culture of the company and create all of these issues. That's when you need to go back to accountability and be responsible to yourself, and make sure that you are not creating discord for other people by trying to buck a system that's not your system. I have a new thing that I've been saying the last, maybe the last month. It's not my business because it's not my business. And so if you are doing these things in the workplace, I'm taking you into work right now. If you're doing these things in the workplace and you're realizing there's misalignment between you and the culture at your job, It's not your place to try to shift the entire culture of your organization if that's not what leadership wants, but it is your responsibility to figure out where would be a better place for you to work so that you can work someplace where you're in alignment. So we've gone through accountability and alignment. Let's talk about communication. I like the communication component of ACT because for many people, when they hear this, they think, oh, yeah, because I'm going to learn to communicate better with others. I need to tell people what's on my mind. I need to be able to speak up for myself. And while all of that is true, when I'm talking about communication in this process, the first level of communication is how we are communicating with ourselves. What are the words that are rolling around in your head regularly? What are the statements, the little mantras, the uncontrollable because they are not intentional thoughts, but they are constant thoughts. So in other words, you may sound very confident. You may talk to people about all the things that you want to do or that you're capable of doing. But when you really sit quietly and listen to yourself, there's something inside of you that doesn't believe any of that. And that right there could be the reason that you start things very often and don't finish them. Or you start things, but you don't really put all of your effort into working to complete them or move them to where they could be successful because there's something in you that doesn't believe you're going to be successful. You don't believe it's going to work. And so the communication has to start with yourself. What are the things that you are telling yourself? What do you actually believe? What is your thought process when you're assessing a situation or a problem? What are your communication patterns that are actually hurting you and not helping you? Because that self-communication, it is vitally important when you are working to make a transition, especially when you're trying to get the joy. Do you speak the language of love and joy to yourself? And if you start really paying attention, you may hear that you do it very well with other people. You give friends and even coworkers and maybe clients, because you could be in a field where you do this for other people professionally. You are able to give them great advice. You are able to be an encourager for other people. But then when you hear yourself talk, you're not speaking from a place of love and encouragement. And this happens more often than people realize. But when you start realizing it, that's when you can start doing something about it. I have this saying where I say, if we are lying to other people, chances are we probably lied to ourselves first. And it could be something really simple. It could be something really as simple as somebody saying, how are you doing today? How's your day going? And typically, we're almost programmed to go, oh, great. Oh, I'm having a good day. How about you? It's like it's a recording that we just hit a button and it automatically comes out. And every now and then, the person might slow down and look you in the eye and go, no, really, I really want to know, how are you doing today? And if and when that happens, it may actually cause us to go, wow, okay, I really can tell this person how I'm feeling. Or even if you don't tell them, it makes you stop and think, I'm not having a good day. This day is terrible. This whole week has been off. What I want you to be able to do when I go through this process with someone is communicate the truth to yourself. It's okay for you to tell yourself, today didn't feel like a good day, or this week I have felt off, because then you can examine what's causing me to feel off. And if you do this backwards and go, what's been out of alignment for me? Let me communicate that honestly to myself. See how this works? ACT. Now we're at the C. You can go back to the A. You're at communication. I want to communicate honestly to myself what is out of alignment for me, what has me feeling some sort of way. And then back up again and go, how can I be accountable and take responsibility for this? What is it that I can do? Is this something that's within my control, or is it somebody else that I need to talk to? So now we're back to communication, and we can look at tools for effective communication with other people. And so we've done accountability, alignment, and communication. And the last one in my ACT framework is trust. And trust is this beautiful thing that can happen when we get the other three right. It becomes easier for us to trust, because when you take accountability and decide to be responsible for making the necessary changes in your life to figure out the things that are important to you and to live in alignment with those things, And when you learn to communicate in joy to yourself, with yourself, and with other people, it gets easier to trust that you've got everything in place to be able to handle whatever happens. And so, rebuilding trust after a betrayal or a loving relationship where you lose the love and the relationship is over, difficult breakups, divorces, it's a self trust is a critical component of being able to really feel whole and really feeling capable in your life. And so trust is connected to these other elements because if you can, when you get these other elements and you start getting more comfortable using them, you will start feeling like you're able to trust yourself better. And that is the only way that you're going to be able to trust other people. And so, one of the things that I will share about trust, because I hear this, is people get hurt and they stop trusting other people. And if you've ever said or heard someone else say, oh, the only person I can trust is myself, that to me is a clear indication that you aren't really trusting yourself as much as you think you are. It sounds good. I believe the reality is when you really trust yourself, you're okay putting yourself out there because you trust that you're going to be able to handle whatever happens. So when you are guarding yourself to such a degree that there is no risk taking, you're not really living your life. You're living so guarded that you're not really living. Like it's almost like you're holding your breath. You're not really taking deep breaths. Like you're not dead. You're not smothering yourself, but you're not breathing properly either. There's a difference between doing this and relaxing and going, it's a completely different kind of breathing. And one of them is what I think that fear of trusting others does. It just tenses you up and it affects everything in your being and it affects your life. Whereas when you can just breathe freely and go, you know what? I have done the work on myself. And while I don't know for sure if this is going to work out, what I do know for sure is that however it ends up, I'm equipped to deal with it. And when that happens, that means you are actually trusting yourself and you position yourself to trust the outcomes, whatever they may be. Trust that you can handle the outcome, which allows you to trust other people because you don't put the pressure on them to be responsible for your emotional state. And it doesn't mean you're never ever going to get your feelings hurt. It doesn't mean that everybody else is using this process or that they got the memo, but it means that you will have a level of a degree of confidence in your ability to handle things that it will allow you to trust that I can take this risk and know that I'm going to be fine. And then the last thing we did ACT, accountability, alignment, communication, trust, and it's in joy. It's the joy act. And the joy of this is it's a crucial component because it basically tells you how you want to show up working through all of this. It's a difference between happiness. There is a difference between happiness and joy, right? One of the best ways I've heard it explained is happiness is based on external stimuli. So if you are a person who ebbs and flows based on things that are coming at you from outside, you are almost always at the will or whim. Your emotions are operating as a result of something that's completely outside of your control. You can't be responsible for because you're not accountable to that. You're not responsible for those things. And so if somebody doesn't do something right, you have a bad day. If somebody says something to you, you're angry. If somebody does something that hurts your feelings, you spend the rest of the day, week, month in pain. And so happiness is predicated on what's coming to you from outside. But joy is something that is internal. When you hear somebody, and I want you to think about it, how often do you actually hear someone say, oh, I felt such joy today? Or I'm filled with, so we hear happy a lot. We hear happy and sad and angry and mad and I'm afraid, I'm anxious. We hear, but how often do you hear or do you even catch yourself saying, I have so much joy in my life. I have so much joy in my life. And I believe when you can do that, it just creates it's almost like a bubble for you that just keeps getting bigger and bigger. And you are willing to take risks because you already know that you have this internal component that is just not going to let you down. And it doesn't mean everything is perfect, everything goes the way you plan, but you have a level of faith and a belief that things are going to be fine. And that for me is what joy is. And there are people who have learned to live with joy, even when things are not going right, when they are being challenged. And it's not this false, it's not the fake smile, lollipops and unicorns and rainbows and cotton candy fantasy thing where you're just going to be pleasant all the time and act like things are great. It's not that. But you can be honest and say, you know what, I'm not having a good day. I do believe it's going to be all right. I haven't figured out how it's going to get there, but I know I'll figure it out. I know I'm going to figure this out. I know I'm going to be okay. But in the meantime, while I'm doing that, I don't have to be miserable, right? I don't have to be miserable. And you can be honest about being sad, and you can be honest about feeling some depression, and you can be honest even about being angry, but you don't allow your emotions to dictate your behavior. And so you're still able to operate with this level of like a baseline of joy in your life. And you can be really real with people about the emotional state, the mental state that you're in at any given time, and know that, but it's going to be okay. And it does have something to do with the people that you surround yourself with, which is a whole nother thing. So the power of using ACT, I'm trying to think right now of what I'll do when I go into the next couple of weeks and I talk about each one of these things individually. I want to give you some sort of some case studies, right? Some examples. But I can share with you one client that I had an opportunity to spend some time with in the UK a month or so ago. And she said to me when we were getting together, she was like, wow, I can't believe what a difference a year has made. Because a year prior to that, she could not see her way through making it to work every single day or how this was going to end. There were so many things that needed to happen. They were still trying to sell the house while they were going through the divorce. And it was just a lot of things going on where she couldn't. She's actually one of the people that did a review or testimony in the book. And I just appreciate her so much for the work that she did on her own behalf. She learned how to take accountability of her emotional state when she was dealing with her ex, and how she figured out what she needed to be in alignment with so that she could maintain a sense of comfort or control with her, just things like her living environment. How do you want to feel when you walk into your living room? And then when she finally moved into her new place, just getting the pictures from her and seeing what changes she made in the yard, in the home, her communication changed. Her ability to be able to say what she was thinking or feeling and how she communicated with herself. So it was just a joy to be a joy, right? It was a joy to be able to witness her making these transitions in her life, having this transformation in her life. And while I was there to help, it's always the client doing the work, right? I'm there as a guide, I'm there as a support, I'm there to sometimes ask the tough questions. I tell people every coaching experience might not end with you going, yay, I'm so glad I talked to her, but it's all there for a purpose. And what I've realized is that she has gotten to a place in her life where she has learned to trust herself. And everything isn't perfect all the time. She's got a couple little things. She's got a few more thresholds, or not, I'm not going to call them roadblocks. She's got a few more little hurdles that just haven't happened yet that she's preparing herself to deal with and get over when they present themselves. But what I'm loving about her is that she is already taking accountability for those in her mind and making choices based on what the possibilities are. Like, this might happen, and if this happens, this is how I'm going to handle it. And so she has taken charge of her life, and she's learned to trust in her ability to do that. And I am seeing her living in joy. When I've talked to her, because we're not even coaching anymore, every now and then we just do a touch point, and I am loving seeing her living her life with the joy that she has. So what you can expect from this podcast, let me just go about the next 4 weeks. The next 4 episodes, I want to take a deeper dive into ACT, AACT. I might have some special guests. There may be some interviews. Otherwise, it'll be me talking to you. And I really want you to take an opportunity to put something in the comments. If you got something out of this, please remember to follow me and share this with anybody that you think might benefit from it. And please go to Barnes and Noble or Amazon and get my book. And if you do, come back here to one of my episodes and put what has helped you. What are you getting out of the book? And remember to do a review on Amazon as well. The next couple of weeks, like I said, I'll be talking about ACT, AACT. In the meantime, thank you for being here with me. And I look forward to you being on this journey with me as we don't go into the next chapter or the next phase, but we are living life in the Joy Act.